The first file that we're going to be modifying is our butterfly garden. So I'm going to go back out to lesson 4, and I'm going to open up butterfly garden. And of course, it opened up in my other window. So what we're going to be doing with this is adding an internal style sheet. And that has to go between the opening and closing head tags. So I'm going to put it right after the title tags, right above the closing head. And all you need for this is an opening and closing style tag. And then in between, you have to identify the HTML element that you are styling. And so we're going to start by styling the body. And we're going to change the color of our text. So we have to use the color style rule. And the value that we are going to give is dark orange. And we're also going to style the background color. And we are going to use the lovely peach puff. Here it is. So it's very important when you are creating the styles that you have the style rule and a colon. Then you have the value that you're setting it to. And you need to remember to put a semicolon at the end. If you forget the semicolon, pretty much from that point on, your CSS is not going to work. So I'm going to save this. I'm just going to press Control and the letter S. It's a shortcut. And then I'm going to view this page. And you can kind of see it over here in my preview, but I'm going to go ahead and open it in a browser. Okay, so just doing that little bit of styling changed how this looks. And we are going to make some more changes. The next change we are going to do is to the body tag itself. And this is to illustrate that the style sheets are truly cascading. So there's an external style sheet, and that will be applied to everything, but your internal style sheet will override it. And if you create an inline style, that overrides everything else. So what we're going to do inside our body tag itself is put in a background color, and this is going to override the peach puff color. Okay, so even though we've got the background color specified up here, the one we did as an inline style is the one it will use. So I'm going to save this, and we'll reload the page. Okay, and that's why they call them cascading style sheets, okay, because they can override each other. So as far as the order of precedence goes, inline styles take precedence over everything else. Then you've got internal style sheets, and then last you have your external style sheets. Our next change, we are going to make another little change up here. Instead of dark orange, although I do like orange, we're changing it to black for our color. And we're also going to be styling the summary section and the H1 tags. So for our summary section, we are going to make that color dark orange. And we are going to specify a font family. And if you have the pop-up, I strongly suggest that you use it. It's the Lucida Sans one that we want. And using the pop-up is way easier than trying to key all of this in. Okay, so I am putting a semicolon on the end. A couple things that you should note. If it's a multi-word font with a space in between, there are single quotes around it. Okay, if it's just a one-word font, you don't need that. Okay, but if it's multiple words, you put it in single quotes. And again, you do have to have a semicolon at the end. And you'll notice that we have several fonts specified. So what happens with the browser is it looks for the first one, and it's actually looking on the users, the person who's viewing the page, it's looking on their computer. If it can't find the first font, then it looks for the second one. Can't find the second, it looks for the third one. Okay, and so on until it gets to the very end. And usually the very last font that you specify is going to be a generic font, and it will always find a generic. Let's see, we've got a couple more things that we are going to specify here for summary. We've got font size, and we'll make it 150%, so about 1.5 times the normal size. And then we got font style, italic. That takes care of summary, and we're going to go ahead and put in our styling for our heading 1 tags. And heading 1, we're also going to do a color of dark orange. That same very long font family, in fact, the font size, those are identical, so I'm just going to copy them. And Control-C will copy, Control-V, as in Victor, will paste. And then we get down to our next style rule here, which is font weight. And for font weight, it's actually giving me a very useful tip. You can use numbers 100 to 900. 900 is heavy bold, and 100 is pretty light. About right in the middle here is average. You can also use bold or bolder. I'm going to choose bolder. And then the last thing we're going to apply here is a text shadow. And so we have 1 pixel here, 1 pixel here. And so this is where the line is. It affects the line to the right and below. Okay. If you wanted the shadow to be a little blurry, you could specify a third setting. I don't want mine to be blurry, so I'm not going to specify a third setting. And black is the color of the shadow. So I'm going to save this, pressing Control and the letter S, and now I'm going to reload. And immediately here you can see the shadow effect that was applied. And you probably noticed a little change in the size, okay, of these headings. Okay, and this is the summary section right here. And then this is the heading 1 that was changed. We're going to make another little adjustment to our body tag. So we'll go back up here. Black and peach puff are fine. And we're going to specify a font family. And this one is Georgia. Let's see, this is Georgia Times New Roman, Times and Serif. So let's pick that. Hopefully you guys can see those tips. Otherwise you have to key it in. And then we've got a font size on this of 1.25 EM. So using percentage and using EM for your unit of measure, they are both responsive formats. So if you're looking on a mobile device, using percentages, using EM, that will translate really well to mobile, which is why I tend to use those 2 units of measure. Okay, so this is about 1 1/4 the normal size. 150% is about 1.5 times the normal size. And then we'll save our changes here. And if you do see a little tip, it is probably helpful, especially while you're learning, the fact that you can read and find out more about these different units of measure. And let's go ahead and look here. Okay, so you can kind of see what that looks like. And what we're going to do next is this little section here. We are going to format that so that it displays more on the side, because you'll notice that we have an aside tag, an opening and a closing, and that kind of corresponds to what you're seeing here. And we do want it to display a little bit differently. We want it basically to display over here. It's kind of like a sidebar. It's just additional information. So we don't really want it in line with everything else. Now what we're going to do is add some styling for the aside element. And we're going to set the margin, the left margin, to 50%. And what that is going to do is it's going to take all of this and it's going to shove it over about halfway to the middle of the screen. And again, using a percentage makes it mobile friendly. And we're going to specify a background color. And we're using hexadecimal here. And then we're going to specify a width for the aside element itself. So the left margin is going to shove it over into the middle of the page, and then from that point, it's going to be about 30% of the page width wide. And we'll specify some padding so that the text isn't right up against the edge of the containing box. And then just in case the containing box isn't quite big enough, we'll set overflow to auto so that we can see scroll bars if there's more text than can display. So let's save that. And we'll take a look. So this box started at the 50% mark, and then it went over 30%. And you can see that the text isn't right up against the edge, and that is because of the padding. And this is mobile friendly, so if I was to go like this, I mean, you can see that things are adjusting fairly well. Okay, and where this starts is always going to be about halfway on the page, because that's when we set the margin, the left margin, to 50%, that is what it's doing. And let's see, we are going to make another little adjustment here. We would like to change the background color when we're viewing the detail information. So to do that, we're going to add a little division tag, and we're going to do some styling for it. So we're going to do background color, and we'll set that to antique white. And we'll set some padding so that the text doesn't display right up against the edge. And now we have to add the div tags. So we are going to enclose everything in details here inside the div. Okay, so Right below the summary, we have the div, and then right above the closing details is where we have the closing div. I'm going to save this so you can see what it looks like. And it's only the first one that we styled so far. Okay, but you can see what that looks like. Okay, and it hasn't been applied here yet. But that really does make our little detail section kind of pop, and that is what we want. So I'm just going to copy and paste. Copy this. So the opening div is going below summary. And the closing div should go before the closing details. And not sure if copying is saving me a whole lot of time on this. I'll do it right here too. And then we will be done. All right, let's save. And let's reload the page here. So now all of them should have that coloring applied. And that looks pretty good. So at this point, you could exit out of here and make sure you save your changes to Butterfly Garden.